the things rock stars don't have to do every day is this: commute to a 9-to-5 job. But Ray Davies of the Kinks is a different kind of rock star. A few years ago, he began to ride the train from his suburban home to recording sessions in London. Quickly, Ray's fantasy life began to focus on the fantasy lives of his fellow passengers. Just what did they think about to get them through that daily ride from home to work and back again? Well, Ray's answer became his debut as a film director, Return to Waterloo. It opens in New York this month and around the country this summer. Tonight, we'll talk to the star of Return to Waterloo, actor Ken Colley, critic David Fricke, film director Martin Scorsese, and Ray Davies himself. For 20 years, Ray Davies has turned his character observations into songs, and more recently into music video. In that time, Ray's been pretty reluctant to reveal much of his own character, but now he's opened up about this next logical step in his career.
I work with visuals. That's the way I've always approached my work. Ever since I did songs like Waterloo Sunset, I wrote a kind of a scenario for that. And Celluloid Heroes, I wrote a play. It's a way of getting me through certain problems in a song. I love stations, railway stations, because most of my life is airports and stations and to do with travelling anyway. I had an idea, because I live down in Guildford, which is in the country. I don't drive and I come up on the train a lot. And I've been writing this film about people on trains. So I had written a song called Return to Waterloo, and I based the whole thing on that song.
Is it necessary, or is it all in vain? Look at all the people around me, same old faces joining the queue for a return to Waterloo.
I don't know why I get these mad ideas. I like travelogues, and I thought that the journey from Guildford to London in this film is a journey from the suburbs, like the rich suburbs, through the poor suburbs, into the sort of inner city. I thought it was nice. The travelogue itself, to me, just told the story. But of course you have to have characters and plots and things. So it started from a travelogue, then I've got the man looking at it, then more about his life.
The forecast says heavy weather, so take your umbrella just in case. Will I get away? Will I see it through? On a return to Waterloo.
Every day in his job, he has to go into Waterloo. It's like going into his past every day and coming back into his present every night. So as well as the conflicts in his life, there's this thing about him keeping on returning to the centre of his life, the beginning of his life, and back out again. It's a very big idea.
Will I reach my destination?
My lead character in Return to Waterloo doesn't speak.
Have I stopped or am I only going slow?
He's a watcher. English commuters don't say anything. I think we're noted for not talking to each other. The character in Return to Waterloo is somebody who watches and observes, but doesn't take action, doesn't move into a situation himself naturally, but he fantasises about it, but doesn't actually do it. He's one of my silent majority. He's typical of many of the people in my songs, like the well-respected man.
Will I get away? Will I see it through? And come back home to you on a return to Waterloo.
It's a film about this man, really, and the world he sees on this train, the world he fantasises about. So I had a problem with doing a script about a man who just sees things and doesn't say anything. So I came to America, and for some reason I met Martin Scorsese. And I just asked him, I said I had a problem. I was doing my first real script, And I was thinking about budgets, and I asked him how much Mean Streets cost to make.
As I recall, he asked how a picture like Mean Streets, that was made in 1973, under such a small budget at that time, was $650,000, and it was made in 24 days. Actually, 26, sorry. He said he wondered how a picture like that could have been made under the circumstances. It was really the worst kind of circumstances you could imagine. In fact, I had to fake all of New York, the interior shots of New York, and some of the exteriors at night, I had to fake them in Los Angeles. So it was a very specific way of shooting. The only way you can do that, I explained, was to make a low-budget film. The only way you can make a low-budget film of that nature, so precise, and get yourself in a situation where you're not doing anything excessive that's going to cost more money and more time, is to literally draw every picture.
So I started a storyboard of my thing, and my first script came from the storyboard. I think it usually works in reverse. But and I just elaborated on that, and when I came to a song, I just wrote the lyrics of the song down and described how I would film it.
From looking at Return to Waterloo, I can see it's something that was very carefully drawn out, I've looked at it a couple of times now, and it's very well done.
Well, it's not surprising that Davies would be a good film director, because a lot of the songs that he's written over the years have really been character sketches or almost plot outlines for what might be movies. Songs like The Well-Respected Man, that's really a sketch of a character, much like The Traveler and riding the trains and going through that sort of middle-class lifestyle. The Preservation trilogy is really a cinematic conceit in which he uses various characters, draws these storylines, people like Flash and the various characters in that, and really he's always done something in a cinematic way. It's as if his songs have been crying out for a good script, something to flesh it out and to put it on the screen.
The Traveller in the film has worked really hard all his life, and he's taken a lot of abuse from people in order to keep his job, to move on the step up the ladder of success, played the game with people.
Stand in line, join the queue, play the game with the right attitude. Reputation, there's so much that you can lose. What struggle to get up there, you've really paid your dues. Now you're up there with us on the pinnacle of success. Still you're climbing on the ladder of success.
And now he's wondering, well, was it worth it? I could have been more of a person, you know, in my own right, if I maybe had not played the game the way they had. And I may have been happier. And look what I've done to this poor woman. You know, he looks at his wife, you know, I've married this woman, what's she got?
Darling, what can I do? I feel so afraid, and even my friends don't know what to say. That's why I'm asking you. I'm so afraid. I know I should be strong, but when affection is gone, it's hard to face each day, knowing love has drifted away.
My film is about people who are isolated. Even the Traveller's family is isolated. He and his wife got married when they were probably 18, 19. They lived, you know, they had their lives, had this daughter. And it's based loosely on my sister and her husband who had two daughters. And they lived with them until they were about 18. And the daughter suddenly left home. And the parents found themselves in a situation where they were alone together for the first time for 18 years.
Hello, Dad. This is Lisa. I can't leave my number. I just wanted to let you know that I'm okay.
She left her message after the tone. I hear it over and over on the answer phone. No one can find her address unknown. She just decided to go out and make it alone. So low, my going so low. So low, so low. My little child is going so low.
This man responds to his daughter. In the film, his daughter's left home. She has blonde hair. He sees a girl on a platform with blonde hair. He thinks of his daughter. He sees another girl on the train with blonde hair who's leaving home, but her parents see her off at the station. But he automatically thinks, because his daughter's left, that she is going to leave and she needs to be protected the same way his daughter was. But she's just a girl on the train. I've tried to get the characters, all the little thoughts that come up on a train. It's the way I think. I go through about 20, 30 plots on a half-hour journey when I'm thinking. I'm trying to get the randomness of this man, random thinking across. Like he said, oh, I'll get up and go for a walk. Oh, that's a nice girl, I'll walk that way. Or if the sun comes out before we get to Clapham Junction, I'll turn right when I get off the train. It's like that sort of thinking, and I think that helps this sort of person through his day. In a way, it's an insight into the way these people think. Ken was the first person I thought of. I don't know why. I didn't know his name. I said, well, that guy that was in this thing. I said, oh, Ken Colley, yeah. Ken's done a lot of work over the years. He's a real stage actor. He's got a very expressive face.
Ray had a tendency, because he was the walking film. It was his conception, it was his writing, it was his idea. He'd cast it and he was directing it. And on the close-ups, he'd sit in the seat opposite me off camera, and really it was all going through his face and through his eyes. So I could take a little bit from that.
A joke was at the end of it. He said, what expression do you want now, Ray? And I said, well, number 58. You know, it gets to that. And he's sort of a Buster Keaton type, really.
The interesting thing about it as a script on a piece of paper was it demanded silent acting the way it used to be. Some silent movies, you see, the people are actually talking quite normally, but there was no microphone. But the real silent movies, it's silent acting.
Right.
And there's not much of that around today, so that was, for me, the interest. And working with Ray.
How comfortable did you feel as director?
I always feel uncomfortable, but I feel uncomfortable doing this, I feel uncomfortable doing anything. You know, being on stage, you know, is difficult for me.
Is it still?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not comfortable going out on stage because I think, well, why do they want to see me? Then I just think of the songs, think, oh, yeah, I'm doing this song, that song, I understand now. But it's always something I worry about. Anyway, I was no less comfortable directing a film than I was producing an album. You know, I had to kind of learn how to play with 30 people as opposed to 5.
He didn't direct me so much as conduct me. I imagine he worked the way musicians work on a session. They try a few things, they say a few things to each other that they both understand, like, you know, I'll try this and go a bit lower there and just come up. And he conducted me.
I must say that the Ken Colley, the actor in the picture, all of the actors handled very well. And it's very hard to get across what he got across in that film without dialogue. And he was handled in a very, very subtle way. He was not overacting at all, and he was directed very well. It's a very hard thing to do.
I've done promos, shorts for my own songs in the past. And the last film I directed in any way was a film I did in America on tour, which I shot about 8 hours of film when I cut that all down, but that was about 10 years ago. So I had to not assert myself, but just find out how everybody else worked.
I think he'd lived with this idea for so long that he must have been editing and shooting in his head for 2 or 3 years, and finally just got the camera to do it with. Because he never hesitated. His grip was completely sure. He knew exactly what he wanted at any given moment, which meant I could relax and just go with him.
Roger Deakins was the cameraman. Roger had done a lot of promos, so he was used to working fast. Roger's very good handheld. We were in a situation where all my shots were kind of magnificent setups and everything, but I knew that at the end of the day it would be mainly handheld at the last minute with no planning at all. And I knew Roger was good at that. It was difficult choosing people who had done promos because there's a lot of music in this, but it didn't fall into the trap of making it all like a video, because it's something I didn't want to do. And right through to the editor, I picked an editor who kind of resisted fast cutting, working with a crew and people. You've got to be sure. It made me even more convinced of what I was doing. I had to be sure of what I was doing, because when you go out there, it's all going to show.
The police have just announced the start of a widespread manhunt in the search for the Surrey rapist. A spokesman said today that in the light of new evidence, they've been able to build up a fairly accurate description of the man, whom they say is well-spoken and in his mid-40s. The police have also issued a warning not to approach this man, whom they describe as extremely dangerous. Here's an identikit picture just issued by the Surrey police.
Most people, whether they admit it or not, they impose their own fantasies, their own problems on a situation. This man has never been famous. He sees this image on a newspaper, and it's a wanted person, and it looks a bit like him. You think, well, you know, if I play on this, I could have fun for a day and be the rapist, have all the notoriety and fame and acclaim without actually doing it.
Have you seen his face? Does it ring a bell? Does it strike a chord somewhere in your mind? And there's a big reward if you help us solve this crime. And if you recognize his face down there, have you seen his face?
But then at the end, you just feel, oh, he may have been. I like bad guys in films. I mean, in real life, they're horrible. But the film is a fantasy again. It's a mixture of fantasy and reality in this man. And just for a minute, he could be the bad guy. I quite like that notion. And if I do any more, this is only the tip of the iceberg. There'll be a lot more bad guys.
I'll tell you what I do with people like that. I put them against the wall and I blow their bloody heads off.
The punks are like, sort of like the black to the traveler's white. They are all the liberation and the aggression that the traveler aspires to, and yet they're just throwing it away, basically because they have no place to throw it to. I think that's essentially Davies' point.
You sold me out, but now we want some of your precious wealth. We sell you out, like you sold me out. Are you in so deep that you can't get out?
Musically, Sold Me Out is really hard, it's angry, it's the kind of real guts rock and roll that a band like the Kinks would have played in 1964, because in 1964 the kids felt the same way.
Sold me out, sold me out, sold me out.
In the best of all possible worlds, Ray Davies would like the aggression and the liberated feelings of the punks to go into the traveler, who has a very sort of proper, righteous way. He really wants to accomplish something. I think if he had those two characters together, that might be Davies' perfect man.
When it comes down to the fine points of character, like my businessmen, they're very British, English. But I think there's a sensibility is more universal than that.
Oi, young fella, do you know this is a non-smoking compartment? I can't read. Can't read?
Britain's built up of tribes. There's the youth, the kind of movement, punk, skinhead, opposed to all the right-wingers and all the conservatives. But it is like a war.
the good times are gone, all of the good men have died.
Young people today are a positive shower. Can't imagine how it all went wrong.
And who will inherit the mantle of power when all the great leaders are gone?
The system that breaks you and fetch you will blow you away. And it's not far away. Not far away.
Where do you fit into all that?
I write songs, and I don't know, I'm a kind of a social misfit in a way, kind of tribeless.
Have you ever belonged, do you think, to any sort of movement?
I didn't like mod. When mods came out, I wasn't really a mod. I wasn't really a rocker. I was an art student, and I guess that was a tribe in itself. I think people hate to admit what they are, and I think maybe I was an art student. I will hate myself forever for being one. The end of the film is very British, really, because the song Expectations is about this man's journey coming to an end, and he's looking back when he was a child, the young boy at the platform. He's him. He's confronting his past and present, and his past being Britain and all his ambitions when he was a child.
Now all the lies are beginning to show, and you're not the country that I used to know. I loved you once from my head to my toes, but now my belief is shaken.
When I was at school, I had it brainwashed me. I went to a church school to begin with. We had this belief that we had this great British Empire, and it was something we all had to live up to. But the more I found out, and the more in the last, say, 15, 20 years, it wasn't that great. And it didn't cover that. It didn't cover the whole world. It was just Britain and a few poor little third world countries. And the British Empire was built on a lot of suffering of other people.
Thought this empire would be here at least 1,000 years, but all the expectations and aspirations slowly disappear.
I've tried to tie up all the ideas I had in the 70s and 60s. I didn't want to make a political film. I wanted to make a film about people. But I think most people have fantasy. I hope most people have fantasy in their lives, the fantastic. Otherwise, we would be robots. And I think that's what I'm trying to say in this story. And that's why I pick people who seem on the outside to be quite dull and ordinary. And something fantastic happens to them.
Will I reach my destination?
Turn to Waterloo, please.
Have I stopped or am I only going slow? Have we got a couple more stations? Or is this as far as we all go? She left her message after the tone. I hear it over and over on the answer phone. No one can find her address unknown. She just decided to go out and make it alone.